Hey team, welcome into this very special episode of the Warriorholic. As you can see, I'm joined by two of my Wahtan clan brothers here for a very special analysis of how the Warriors went in 2023. First up, I'm joined by Levon from WahsUp. Welcome in, my brother.
What's up, guys? Thank you for having me.
And Nick from Warriors Fans TV. I think this is actually the first time I've had you on the channel, even though I've been on yours a few times, so welcome in, brother.
Mate, looking forward to it today. You're always welcome back on Warriors Fan TV anytime, both of you guys.
Oh, thank you. It's been an awesome year, to sort of all three of us sort of kicked off this year. I think we've got various stories of why we've done it, but I don't think we could have picked a better season to kick it off. I don't think it would have gone quite so well in 2022, but I think we're probably one of the big reasons why the Warriors went so well. So let's take credit on that.
Yeah, we'll take that.
For sure. So today, we're going to start off by doing a bit of a review of how the backs went in 2023. We'll give them a few thoughts on each of the players, and we'll give them a rating, and then we'll close up by what we think maybe the starting lineup come round one in 2024, if everyone's fit and ready to go, with a few new additions there, and a little bit of a rivalry in a couple of positions. So without further ado, we're going to jump right into this. Actually, before that, I will put a link to both of these guys' social media profiles in the comments here. Please feel free to jump on them, but I doubt very many people won't be following them if they're following me, but just to be sure. Rightio, we're going to start out with C&K there with my man WahsUp. What's your take on his season?
I think C&K's been packaged with, the group of guys that were kind of cast-offs, unwanted at their old club, and taking that into account, initially you're probably thinking as a Warriors fan at the start of the year, why are we getting someone like C&K? If the Raiders didn't want him, why would we have him? That was probably my initial thought when a lot of these guys come over, that it seems as though an old club doesn't want them anymore. But pleasantly surprised, and a big foundational piece of the team as we witnessed it throughout the year. I think if you actually look at the club and all of their social media, you'll always see C&K in and around the guys and motivating them, being an example. I always looked at C&K with his notebook out. He's the if I was giving an analogy, he's the boy at the front of the bus or the front of the class, not teacher's pet kind of, but he was leading the example for the younger ones. And if I take that into account to his whole season, I'd probably have to say one of his best seasons of his career, barring maybe the 2019 season in terms of performance, is probably on the same level. But if you take that into account, the cultural impact, the impact in the culture of the team, he was a big part of that. I mean, at the start of the season, we thought maybe he was out of place a few times defensively, and you're thinking, okay, something's wrong here. But as you got to understand the system, you realise how important he was around the middle of the ruck, especially on goal line defence. And then, when we saw Tane come in, Tane was great, but we also saw why we missed C&K. And we got to add in the element of Reece Walsh, that the season before we've had Reece Walsh and it was just leaking points and defensively. And I suppose, not to bring up the grand final, but a few moments there where you can tell, okay, that's why we got C&K. So not to take a cheap shot at Reece, but he's had a great season. But for us, we needed that.
It's a massive cheap shot.
He won't be watching, bro.
Yeah.
He's got no love
He
for
won't
us.
care. But to take for what we needed a C&K, and so we soon realised how important that defensive role was. And then his work off the ball, working around the park, and then we started to see a lot of link play. Setting up people on the outsides, drawing and passing, getting involved. He just really kind of blossomed and bloomed in front of our eyes, and it's great to have him in the team. And he's just going to only get better the more he gets into the system with Webby. But I think he adapted very well first year back. Just an insane season, in my view.
So for the rankings, guys, just to let you know, we're very biased Warriors fans, obviously. So we're going to use my non-technical system here, which is basically 1 to 10 and how we think they played versus what their full potential was for the season. So we're not going to be able to directly compare a guy like Chance against Rocco Berry in very different parts of their career. So it's what we thought Chance delivered versus what we think he potentially could have had he played to his best. So what score are you giving him, my man?
I'm giving him I want to give him a 9. I think it's only fair. He from his potential, I think there's room for growth for next year. But for what we needed this year, he well and achieved over and above what I thought. He did have a few HIAs. That's not his fault. Things like that happen. But he came back stronger every time and didn't dip in his performance. And that's why I give him a 9 in my eyes.
Awesome. How about you, Nick? Any quick comments there on CNK, and what did you give him?
No, I'll just agree with you on the whole cast-off type of crew that we had. It's almost as if him, Ford, Newcorder to some kind of respects had a bit of a point to prove. That's the kind of attitude you kind of saw from them, that were like, well, if you guys then, you're going to put me down in cup, and now I'm going to go over to this other team and I'm going to show you. And what better way to show them was burning through Canberra in that game. Yeah, absolutely. I actually had him as an 8, because being a one-eyed kind of Warriors supporter, it's really difficult to look at our team and not think that everyone... it's easy for me to judge after a game, because after a game you can kind of pinpoint things, right? But when we look at this entire season, and we're going to go through the same thing with Monday Night Kōrero coming up next Monday as well, it's really difficult for me not to actually have anyone lower than an 8. So when I went through my scoring, they were all really high, and I actually had to go back through them all and be like, how about we bring these guys down, those guys down. With CNK, there's not really much he can't do. I actually haven't seen him put it on the boot much. But in terms of his defence, his link-up play, his sweeping, if he skipped Berry a few times, I think his try assist will be a lot higher. But obviously, in order for him to draw and pass into Berry to get it out to DWZ, that started coming in as early as round 4. I think when we started seeing that play, boys. So look, I'm just so happy to have him, as long as he stays fit. And like you said, Levon, those HIAs has got nothing to do with him. But you can see him; he's hungry to be here. He's hungry to have that number 1 jersey and to own it. And after this season, he's definitely owned it.
Awesome, man. Yeah, I can just echo your comments that I was disappointed when he left back in the day. I thought we should have given him a go in wing or centre or something to try and keep him in the club, because he just had something. He had a few injury issues there. I guess it contributed to him initially, dropping out of favour at Canberra. But I was so confident that when he came in, he would play with heart, and he would be a real, like you mentioned, the culture leader. So I felt like he was 100% tide riser with his attitude towards life, towards footy, his fitness, the effort plays. Seeing a fullback take 3 hit-ups on one set to give the forwards a rest, that's got to lift people. So I'm going to give him a 9. Because he's in the top handful of players for me. As a senior player, he stepped up. It'll be interesting to see what the levels are that get added to his games that were, they're probably beyond my recognition at the moment. I'd love to give him a 10, because I personally couldn't think of much more I could have expected of him, but there will be more that they're asking of him, so that's why I've given him a 9. But really, really excited to see, how he goes, and I love that Webby's told him up front, you get that first go at number 1 next year, regardless of Roger coming in. So then we have the young understudy, which will be one of the interesting questions going into the futures. Like, if Chance does get injured, does Tane Tuaupiki come in there, or does Roger go there? But he came in this season 5 times. So just another quick point here. We're going to focus our review on guys who played a minimum of 4 games. Otherwise, we end up sort of spending a lot of time on guys who maybe can't really assess just on one or two performances. So Tane played 5 games there. What are your thoughts on him, Nick?
Oh, look, I'm massively excited for him. I've got some concerns, which I'll probably get into after this, but I remember him coming on, I think, around 3, starting that game against North Queensland where we won. And that game for me was like, a shock. I think, for us beating a top 4 team. I think even Tan said it. She almost cried when she watched that game. It was one of kind of disbelief down there when we played North Queensland. He's got potential, guys. Like I'm really concerned for him and his future, because the way that he plays and the limited amount of games that he's had, you can see he's got the potential to take on the line, to break tackles. He's got the gas. Like when we look across our team, the player that I think has got gas is Luka Mikiafu, and him. No disrespect to our wingers, of course they've got gas, they can score tries, but we look at those players that can break games open, and I hate going back to Walsh, but I'm just gonna have to go back to him because you've already done it, Levon. He can break games open like that, right? And I'm just a bit concerned for him for next year, because come November, you've already said it, bro, is if CNK picks up a head injury, what's to say that that Roger, a Dally M winner fullback, is not just going to slot straight into there? Then what happens to our Tuaupiki? Because if I was like a Tigers, or maybe not a Tigers, but if I was like Bulldogs, or actually number ones are pretty good across the NFL, the NRL. What's to say they can't just kind of guarantee him more game time? Because he's pretty young at the moment. Is he going to be okay to be down at, well, no disrespect to Cup, but is he okay to be at Cup? Or after these 5 games, he's had a bit of a taste of NRL. What's to say no one out there is going to say, hey, listen, come over to us. We can give you way more than 5 games, and we can develop you into the player that you want to be. So he's going to get that game time. Look, I don't think it was enough for me to give him like a too high a score. I didn't see enough of it to say, he's up there, but I give him an honest 5. But like his potential is just ginormous. He can read the game so well. He's got a kick on him as well. That game he came on when CNK went off against the Titans. Yeah, he was a bit rusty at first, but then he started joining the line and sweeping in and doing the job of the fullback that we need. So huge potential for him, but concern for him for next year.
Awesome. Thanks, man. How about you, WahsUp?
Yeah, I feel for a lot of these guys that are on the fringe. You look at guys like Tane being used as an 18th man sometimes, getting sent back to Cup, getting called in randomly, when HIAs happen. It must be quite difficult being on the bench and having to be in game mode, even though you might not even get on the field for 3 or 4 weeks. So I give him a lot of credit for being professional. In terms of his potential, look, he was the Queensland Cup Dally M, whatever their one is last year. So that says a lot about his quality and potential. We didn't get to see that because obviously CNK is our starting fullback. And to Nick's point, is there a club out there that's willing to give him more time? We'll have to find out, because I know he's on a player option, I think, next year. But the only adding element I think that we can say is that the Webby element, being around RTS now, is, for him, it's got to ask the question, what's more important to me? You look at the Panthers, they've got guys in that system that haven't cracked the first grade, but when they come in, they're just red hot because they've had that time under the microscope and studying under, Dylan Edwards or whoever it is. And I think maybe for Tane saying, look, yeah, I might not get a starting spot next year, but I'd love to work with Roger. What can I get from Roger? What can I get more from Webby in my game? And the Warriors are developing him. I think he's definitely grown. It's not like he's just sitting there doing what he's already done. I think he's learnt things. And he's come in and made massive... He's been a part, I think, of games that we've won. I wouldn't say he's been an issue. But, yeah, I'd give him, for me, based on what his potential is, we didn't get to see enough of it. So I've given him around a 7. I think I want to give him a bit more just because he did add a factor where he broke through the line. Some link play, yeah, but that's, again, just not getting the touches. But if he had full volume, who's to say he wouldn't have been a 9? But yeah, that's my thoughts.
Yeah, it's a difficult one when you haven't seen so much of him, and I'd probably tend towards something like a 7 as well. That I think he, of the guys who kind of made debuts or like came up from Cup this year, he's one of those ones who made a genuine impact, particularly in that North Queensland game, particularly the games where he started. I like what Nick said. That I felt like if you looked at Brisbane, I think we're trying to emulate a lot of what the Panthers do, and they showed at one point there that without Cleary stepping up, they didn't really have that X factor to just break games open. And I think that's what Brisbane brings. They've got the strength, and if they can get their consistency up, where they play with a higher level of precision, they'll be very dangerous. And why we struggle to break both of them is just that X factor without Metcalf, without that speed of someone who can score from anywhere. And I think Tuaupiki offers that. I think he plays beyond his weight. I think it was Devon, you may have mentioned during the season how he never gets put on his back. For a guy his size, he's very good in the tackle, so he must be good at in the wrestling and so forth. But the only thing that gives me a slight sense of comfort is Webby mentioned earlier on in the season, after that Cowboys game, that people were saying, "Oh, does he stay in because he played so well?" And he just come back and said, "Look, CNK is a Kiwi international. He's our fullback. This kid has got patience. He knows his role, and he's prepared to do that." And I think talking to a couple of the other guys, like the players this year, they mentioned it, that he is a really patient guy. So I think he's actually about 24, though, right? He's not as young as you think.
Yeah.
So there's that factor. But I don't know how many years Chance will have left in him because of the head knocks. He seems to me like he's a sensible guy, and he's a very strong family man that, this is just a guess, that you wouldn't imagine he's going to keep pushing the limits just to keep playing for his health side of things. And I don't think they want to put Roger in there because of the longevity of his body, being, what is he, 31, 32 now?
30 now.
Yeah, so, and I think that they have identified, but maybe we need that, but X factor in the centre. So I'm trying to find ways to give myself confidence that he stays, because I really hope he does. I mean, I think he'll be one of the real high priority players that they try to keep hold of. Dallin, Mr. WahsUp, what was your take on his season?
Probably one of the biggest transformations we've seen from within the club. We talked about CNK coming from another club and into us and our system, but within Dallin's been with us for the last 2 years. I feel, he was a player that probably hit rock bottom a little bit in his career. At the time at Canterbury wasn't good for him. He's spoken about that, about his confidence being rocked, and then it does wonders what a coach can do to restore your confidence, and you can see the value and quality of him as a player. Take out all the tries and all those things about him. Dallin, adding in the tries, the finishing on the tries, second to none, and it was professional finishing. There wasn't a time. I mean, if you saw Dallin maybe 2 or 3 years ago and he tried those finishes, he'd knock maybe 2 or 3 of those on. He'd go out of bounds, or something would happen. But now he's just so detailed and clinical in his work. Look, you got to really acknowledge him. And then there's the other elements to him, where the Canberra game where he caught that ball and put it on a dime. And then he did the same thing against the Bulldogs, where he got the aerial ball, maybe even an area where we underutilized him to an extent, getting him on cross-field bombs. We probably didn't go to that enough, in my view. So that tells you he's got even more potential. And then you add in his work out of yardage, just the hit-ups he takes. He cops him on the chin, and he just goes into contact fearlessly, and you have to. Unless you're like a Brian Tor goes into contact fearlessly, but he's still able to kind of grind through it. I think Dallin uses that more just crash impact to kind of make that first initial contact and break through. Kind of a little bit different styles, but the same intent of like, we need yardage, and he's like, give me the ball. I want these hit ups. So for me, it's like potential. It's up. Yeah, it's got to with the try scoring record in 6 or less games. And look, we had Kosi, and I respect to Kosi. We'll get into him, but I thought Kosi was the way forward, and it just tells you when Dallin came back. I mean, that game against the Cowboys when he came back, the second Cowboys game, it was a little bit like, oh, no, get Kosi back on. But then once he got into his rhythm, I think a couple games after that, man, we just went on a tear. And then that try-scoring record, for me, it's like a 9.5 or based on his potential, it's probably maybe a 9. I'll solidly say at 9, yeah.
Awesome, man. Thank you. Nick, what do you got, man?
Yep. Yeah, fearlessly trying to get us out of the red zone a lot. I massively agree with that. Putting the tries aside, putting the flash and the secret. The sauce. He's a very saucy player, confidence player. I think we've got a couple of players who are confidence players. They do a couple of good things, and then they're off to the races. Coming back, absolutely coming back in that Queensland game. We were even talking about the preview before that game. Where does DWZ fit into the team? But, in Webby we trust. And there's reasons for that. I suppose one criticism, I've got to say a criticism on the bro, is he's very high risk, high reward, trying to look for that intercept. Now, there's a few times where he's jammed, and there's a couple of times where he's got an intercept. One of them was against the Broncos. Another one was against the Dolphins. But there's been many times that I've seen at the stadium, the bro's jammed. And there's that overlap on the outside, so not prone to those defensive reads. With all due respect, though, that ball's coming out pretty fast, so you got to think pretty fast if you're gonna go or you're gonna stick. I like to see him stick a few more times, just to see, because I can see where his brain is, but the halfback on the other side can see where his brain is as well, right? He's got a big, massive mullet. Right, and he's standing quite flat-footed, so he knows what he's doing. And if I know what he's doing and I'm up in the stadium, then the halfback on the other side knows what he's doing. So that's my only criticism to him, would just be to, and I'm sure Webby's probably looking through these whole things as well, just to look at those times where stick instead of twist, because he's only had a couple of intercepts. He hasn't had a lot. We only just see them on the highlights. There's been many a times where he's gone for it and it just hasn't. It's either gone short or it's gone out to the winger and there's been a try on. For me, I've given the brother an 8, a solid 8. I think there's more. I think there's more to come for DWZ.
Yep.
I think there's other areas to his game that we haven't seen yet.
Yep.
Yeah, I mean, I went 8 as well. So the key points that stuck into my mind is he came back a bit rusty, and then when he went into fullback, I think he played like a half a game and CNK got injured, and then he played a game at fullback, and that seemed to free him up. I was a little bit concerned, to be completely honest. So I know he was traditionally a fullback, but I was a bit worried. But he just ate it up and seemed to flourish from that point on. And the two key turning point or differences for me this season versus last season is he always ran in really hard into contact, but he lost the ball a lot in contact, and he also struggled to make post-contact meters. Whereas this year, his ball handling and contact was second to none, and he made big post-contact meters. So I think there must have, the way he was going into contact must have slightly changed there. He did his job every time that ball came out to him, and like he said, he got delivered some really pearlers, but he finished some great balls. But I would have to agree that, talking to Sam Hewitt the other day, that was one of his concerns going into next year, is getting those edge defences right. Just the timing of when you do jam and when you don't, and if you do, you get the guy with the ball. But I think we got that wrong a couple of times. So it's something like I agree he'll definitely be aware of and be working on. So I don't think, it's hard. 8 out of 10, could you have expected much more because of the development? So probably not, but I just believe he's got more growth in him than CNK for me. CNK's playing close to that peak football, so that's why I've given him an 8. He played 20 games, by the way, for 24 tries, gets the try record for the Warriors. I was really stoked that he got that. And as we said, off 6 less games, had he played every game, hate to think how many he would have got. So well done to him, and hopefully he starts that run like Manu with years and years of 20 plus tries in a row. Nick, what about Montoya? He played 27 games for 11 tries.
Yeah. Montoya, I've criticised Montoya this year for reasons of lapse in defence. So we're talking, you've already mentioned, right? So don't need to go back over it. our edge defence sometimes is very vulnerable. Criticise him sometimes for having quiet games, but actually when I've gone back through it and realised why perhaps the ball is just not getting to him, we haven't had the 6 at the time. We haven't had in earlier times. So in the Queensland game, I think it was the Doggies game, I think he scored a try in that one as well. Early on, when we had Te Maire Martin around, there was definitely more action happening on that side. I think even Viliame even scored a try.
Yeah. Yep.
He scored a try, didn't he?
Yeah.
And I think he even had a try assist on that side of the field, right?
Yeah.
So my criticisms with him is perhaps not valid in the sense that side of the field, for whatever reason, we just haven't really been. We just went on a mad run on the right? So let's just call it what it is, right? DWZ was scoring all the tries on that side. Sean's directing all the traffic on that side. Now, when Luca came into the fold, I was like, okay. There was a few times there. We'll get into Luca, I suppose, later on. Actually, I'll leave my comments for Luca for later on. All right. But there were times where, and it wasn't even jamming on that side, or even going for an intercept. There was just times where we were just getting schooled constantly down on the left-hand side. Other teams knew it. Manly came over, they knew it, right? They scored a couple of times down that side. So my criticism for him is pretty much one of from the heart. I know he can do better. We've seen he can do better. I know how many tries did he score, did you say, bro?
11.
11 down that side. Definitely when we've got some plays going on down that side again, when Te Maire Martin came back, there was more action happening on that side, but I think there's some areas that he could just tidy up with, and he's actually another player I'm a little bit worried about. You know, there's a few players I'm worried about, and he's actually one of them. Whether or not he's going to be sticking around, or whether or not Webby has a plan for him, because I know he's got a plan for everybody. Whether he's got a plan for him or not, I don't know. I'm just a little bit worried about him. Just so my rating for him, it's going to sound harsh, but the brother for this year, I'm giving him a 6. Because I know he can do better.
All right, cheers, man. Leave on.
Yeah, similar sentiments. I think he started off red hot. Remember, he was averaging like 200 meters a game. And then there were just some periods. I think the Knights game might have been a big one where we played them over in Newcastle, and he did a big knock on. I think it was in the last part of the game where we ended up losing. It wasn't all his fault, but there were some moments where he made a few errors, and that's happened throughout the season. I think for Montoya, it's probably been in his eyes probably a difficult season, trying to balance his performance amongst a team that's doing really well, you know, and he kind of at times felt like the odd man out, wasn't, you know, Dallin scoring all these tries on the right side, Montoya, not much happening. And it goes to what Nick was saying about not getting access to the ball. We saw Te Maire Martin was always more than willing to get him open. And even in the last couple of games, he scored a few tries because Te Maire unlocked him, especially the Knights game, got Pompey early ball, and then I think Montoya went over. So it's not as though it's all his fault. You know, if he was getting the same service that Dallin was getting on the other side, maybe he gets more tries. I don't think we're hung up too much on his tries. It's more, you know, his yardage did drop a little bit. I'm not sure what the numbers are, but I felt as though he was less impactful coming out of yardage. And then, you know, the other part was, you know, defensive reads. Again, it's a chain thing. I don't think Pompey at times was helpful either. And I don't think the insides were as helpful. And it's going back to what we're talking about, Dallin, making decisions and what your decisions are. And you do have sometimes when it gets to the end of the line, it's 50-50. Like, literally, Dallin could have got skinned against the Broncos 2 weeks ago, but he chose to get the intercept, and it came off. And then you try that again, and it doesn't happen. So you really got to be really just have a vision and anticipate what's going to happen. But I think by his standards, yeah, I would say for me, probably 6.5, 6, similar to what Nick had.
Yeah, it's tough because he's one of those players who plays with, I mean, they all did this year, but even in last year and during COVID, he was one of those guys that always played with heart. Like, he gave it his all every single time. And, you know, the amount of work he does, and he played every game this season, the fatigue factor must come into it because he takes some big hits, like just no thought of self-preservation. But his numbers did go from over 200 to some weeks down around 100. So, but getting over 100 is still good. But given that we use our back three as the first 3 or 4 hit ups off our line, it's something that he's got to deliver. And I wonder if that's not his role. So a couple of points I noticed is that the game he went into centre and he had a bit more room to move and a bit more time with ball in his hand. He showed what attacking ability he had. That fend and to beat a few players. I'm trying to think of the game that was
Cowboys,
against Cowboys, and that
Cowboys
was it
at home.
Metcalf he put away. That was a great
Kosi.
Was it? Yeah, it was a great run. So I feel like he does have a lot of attacking potential, but we've got to learn to unlock both sides so we're not so predictable there. I think sometimes with the defense, one thing I noticed, like the game against Manly, he was standing like close to 10 meters in from the line and staying there, and I wondered why we didn't just sort of spread out a little bit so he's actually standing on the edge on the sideline so he can defend in, because he's not the fastest, and when you've got a guy like Saab and you give him 10 meters on the outside, it's always going to be a struggle. But that you wouldn't imagine that's a personal decision. That's obviously a structure thing, so I wonder if that's something we don't need to look at there, is where they actually position those guys against the faster wingers. And again, it's something isn't quite clicking with that whole coordination of the defense on the left. But if you look at it, they're all quite new. So you've got Jackson Ford is new to the team. You've got Metcalf and Tamati Martin were both new, and they rotated in and out. You had Adam Pompey started on the right, came to the left, and then you had Montoya there. So there's a bit of shuffling around. So you'd hope that will build. I still feel like we lack that little bit of real X factor blistering speed on one of our wings. Maybe we make up for that with Roger. His acceleration will be there. I don't think he's got length of the field speed, which is something that still concerns me, that guy just gets the ball in his hands and if he gets through, no one's catching him. And I think DWZ's he's relatively quick top speed, but I don't know whether he's got the ability to maintain it at his age. So, and that's not a criticism of Montoya. I like the way we use both of our wingers, which means that Adam and those guys get a break and can play big minutes. So I gave him a 6.5. I don't think he'll be as happy as he would have maybe even last year. Be curious to see how they fix up those edges next year, though. Getting on to Kosi, this is an interesting one. He played 11 games, actually. I thought it was a few less than that. He played 11 games with 10 in a row, and then coming back for the Dolphins game, and he had 5 tries. What was your take on him, Levon?
I think I want to give Kosi probably a 7.5. I know, and it's probably... But based on his potential, he's a young player, and I think if I'm going to rate it, I'm going to rate the young players a little bit higher because they're growing, and I think we saw a lot of growth in Ed. The game for me was the Sharks game where him and Mulatalo were going at it, and he had some swagger about him, and he was willing to give it back, and that was the difference from the Ed that was played in the Anzac Test massacre last 2022. I don't want to say too much about that. And then from the transition from that to the person he is now, mate, and right until the point of that Panthers game where he hit Critter, and you think that was a seminal point of him coming to his growth. And actually, a lot of it, and we're talking about wingers and jamming and stuff, a lot of Ed's decisions sharpened up both sides of the wings because he played right and left. So I want to give Ed a bit of credit for that because there were moments where I felt he was quite sharp in his decision making, and that Critter one was an example. Just a shame that he got that knee injury. I think that had a big impact, and we probably could have gotten away at times with maybe Montoya and Kosi at centre. But it all worked out well in my eyes, having Berry and Pompey. But you just wanted to accommodate for Ed because he had big running meters. He's got a good running style to him. And he can break that line. He's big dude. Me and Warriorholic was sitting watching him, and I was like, I didn't realize he was that big. So he's a future star. And you're looking at that Montoya Kosi things, and now you're starting to think Ed's about to break open this door now. He might be that starting wing at some stage. But I thought he was quite good in all facets. 7.5 for me.
Awesome. Nick?
Like I said before, right, we were debating where DWZ is going to be playing because, of course, he's playing so well. So why would you upset that? I think it was the Sharks game. Yeah, definitely the Sharks game. He was going backwards and forwards, but it was also the Knights and the Cowboys game after that. Like he's good for tries. Right, he knows he just grew into like a confidence player this year, and he started really becoming, really wanting to cement that winger spot, I thought. And then the question was around, well, where's Montoya going to go? I do think, though, just kind of looking back, he is good for a couple of missed tackles. I think early on in the, I suppose it's just a little bit of rust. I think in the Knights game, the Roosters game, and even the first Cowboys game where we won, I think there was a couple of defensive reads there that they potentially got wrong, and absolutely smashing Crichton was like, I just thought that game could have been ours, right? And like he just really stood up and then Crichton came back and smashed Walks. So you wanna fuck with the bull, you get the horns, right? So he's no chump. He's definitely going to come back. So yeah, no, it's very, very similar to you as well. I gave Kosi a 6. I gave Kosi a 6 because he's got huge potential. Yep. Unfortunately, he was out for such a long time. I think he actually played Cup as well, didn't he? Get put into Cup?
He played about 4 games Cup, I think, 5 games, because he double injured his knee.
Yeah. So another headache for next year. When he's fit. Come that pre-season time, I want to know what's going to happen on that left. Right, I really want to know what the hell's going to is Webby going to stick, and if he sticks, he's obviously got a plan. He's obviously got a plan for our left side centre and our left side winger, or are we going to see a different dynamic in that one? So, watch the space, Fano. Watch the space.
Yeah. See, I gave him an 8 purely. Like for this season, based on what people were probably expecting, down in Wellington, getting ready for the Knights round 1, Dallin pulls a calf and everyone's like, oh, they were so deflated. And even though he came back and had a couple of okay games last year after the Anzac test, that will stick in people's mind for a long time, right? That one, I can't remember who Manu had that nightmare against, or one of the Panthers wingers similar. It sticks in your mind and creates that sense of concern. But for me, I think he exceeded everyone's expectations by a long way, and he's probably a perfect example of Webby's power. Just talking to him there, and you can see he's a very humble guy, but just when you hear him talking about what Webby brought, you just see the smile start to come out, and how much confidence he gave him. And it's interesting when I asked him, where he saw his future, and he said he really wants to be a centre because that's where he played all his footy growing up, which I didn't realise. So it's quite good to have that sort of backup ability there. And he is, like Levon said, he's huge. I'd say he's close to being the biggest guy in the Warriors from height-wise and the girth of him. So I don't know whether he'll get a little bit too big for wing and what his body size will suit best. But I feel like he showed he's got a lot of skill. And the improvements I saw one was under the high ball. He was very solid under the high ball. In fact, I don't recall too many of them that he cocked up. And he said he just put hours and hours and hours into that over the off season. And I do like the fact he's got a big hit in him. He put a couple on this season which were momentum shifting, which I think Montoya did on offense. Like he nailed guys like with those big fins, and that particularly in the start of the season. So it's nice to have that guy who's going to put the centre or the half in the opposition in two minds. If Kosi nails them with the timing right, it's just a Mollem-like. So I gave him an 8 this year. If he did the same thing next year, maybe it would be lower, but just purely because of what my expectation was coming in. He seems patient, but he seems hungry, so I'm curious. I think Montoya will really have to lift his level next year, otherwise there's a good opportunity for Ed to come in. I think the only thing that held him back this year is the timing of when he came back. We're getting a little bit too close to finals for Webby to really want to make too many changes. So we shall see. Watch the space, as you say. We'll go to Nick for Rocco Berry.
Yeah, I mean, son of an All Black. Apparently apparently he could make, I think in one of your talks as well, the Warriorholic, you reckon he could probably walk into the All Blacks team. He's that good.
Well, that was based on a good friend of mine who's a super rugby coach who said,
okay.
I asked him, we were having a bit of a chat about, he actually went and observed the Warriors for a week, and I asked him specifically about him, and he said that guy would be an absolute superstar. I'd pick him tomorrow, and he'd be an All Black within a year or so of being back in rugby. And this is a guy who's, he's a very, very Webby-like coach. I don't think he would have said that if he didn't mean it.
Oh, look, throughout the season we were talking in our Monday night corridor about how safe he was, but we wanted to see more from him, and look, for me, he was one of the standout players on that right side. I don't know how many try assists he would have got this year. I don't have the stats in front of me. It would be pretty high. But his tackle efficiency, I remember us doing our rounds, and he was always up around 90 something tackle efficiency. Doesn't miss many tackles from kind of memory. But then he started backing himself at the kind of the last end of the season, and I think that try that he scored against the Knights, was it? Where he had about 3 or 4 on him. He had to twist and turn, and then ended up scoring that try. But definitely the chemistry, when you think about the chemistry with him and DWZ, the chemistry between him and CNK, I would hope that he has cemented his spot on that right side centre, and that right side centre isn't going to go to somebody else, because I can see him being with the Warriors hopefully for a very long time. So I'd say for him, I really enjoyed watching him this year, and I've actually given him a 7.
Good man.
7 for Rocco Berry.
Yeah, I'll be something similar as well. 7, based on what he can do. He's got a lot of room to grow. Defensively, we talk about guys. We leaked 700 points last year, guys. That's ridiculous. And I think edge defense. On a lot of the cases, the wings and that, but for the majority, Rocco Berry has been really solid in terms of his just pure one-on-one defense. He's not. Sometimes he can't stop everyone, but he pretty much isolates. He did a good job on Crichton. He done a good job on who was the left centre for Knights. I can't remember who it was, but everyone he's come up against, he's done a good job.
Gagai, wasn't it?
Gagai.
Was it Gagai? Yeah.
Shut them down. Bradman Best, I think it was. Bradman Best didn't have a big day. Everyone he's come up against, he's held them, kept them quiet, and that's what you got to do. And so on that side of the ball, he's been fantastic. And then on the other side of the ball, he's starting to really stretch out and grow. I mean, people had an issue with his yardage at the start of the season, and he did have issues really going into contact. But if you actually watch him now, he'll get on the second or third tackle, and he'll start to pick out who the person to go to and try and get that extra meters. So I would actually, if you looked at his numbers, I haven't looked at it, but his yardage numbers probably picked up, I would say.
Definitely grew, yeah.
Yeah, so that is a good sign. That tells me that this kid's got room to grow, and so he's only going to go up. Then you looked at his distribution, like last year, he used to get tackled on the 5th tackle all the time, and it wasn't, considering our offense was poor last year, but now he's actually distributing to his outsides. The best move I saw him do was the Sharks game where he stepped Aramean and then did the inside offload. We just want to see more of that. There's that potential there where I think he will become a real good attacking threat one-on-one. But yeah, for me, 7.5. Yeah.
Yeah, but it's tough for me because I don't know why, but the first time I ever saw him play, the first thing that popped in my mind is this is a young Conrad Smith. He's never going to be the biggest, the fastest guy, but just his ability to deliver on the fundamentals. And he got a lot of stick earlier on in the year, particularly like his running meters and stuff. And I have to believe that was a game plan, telling him, let's not waste you on those. And we used him on the kick chase, but I didn't want to steal WahsUp, copy his style, but he wasn't on TikTok at the time, and I thought, no, I'm going to do this. I broke down a game. Can't remember who it was, but just showing a couple of the things that he did that people wouldn't notice. So there was one play, he was inside Chance, probably midfield. He managed to get himself around Chance to receive the ball, straight and just in time, so it didn't drift and take the room away from Dallin, and just time the pass to perfection to put Dallin in untouched. And there's another one you can see that it's going sideways, and at the last minute he'll just take those 2 steps towards the guy with the ball to always maintain that space for Dallin. The ability, when you see him, his hands will slide off a player who beats him on the outside, and he'll turn and he'll grasp the guy with a legs tackle. And he was making, on average, I think it was like 18 tackles a game at centre, when most guys are probably making about 8. So that's at 90 odd percent. His his run meters, he got up over 100 meters there a couple of times towards the end, and I think that's probably, one is building his size up a little bit and his technique of where, who to run at and how to run at. So I feel like he's got, the potential for Africa, and I feel like him and Ali going forward will be a great centre combination for us. It would match any in the comp, 2 or 3 years down the road if they're both patient. So I gave him an 8, and again, it's just because he didn't get a lot of time and he had such that interrupted development, and people don't realise that he's only in really his full first year of rugby league because it was so disrupted, and he learned to play rugby league in first grade, which shouldn't have happened. So I'm really excited to see what happens with him, and I think he did cement his spot, and you can just tell that by the way Webby talks about him. You can just see that there's something Webby's seeing in that guy, that he's got a lot of confidence in him. So excited to see. Pompey, we'll go to WahsUp for this one.
Yeah, Pompey, a polarising figure. Just for me personally, I've enjoyed watching Pompey grow. From where he's come from, again, another one of those kids that didn't have a great start to his career. Pretty much prime COVID years is when we've seen Pompey, similar to what a CHT was, just a young up-and-coming kid that just in a bad rut in the club around the culture. But to see him develop, and I mean, there was that talk at the start of the year, I think with Viliame was the big talk. No, everyone had Pompey on their cup side, and then when we saw Pompey pop through and he was the starting centre, everyone was like, what? Based off of what we'd seen. And then if you honestly watched him closely, and he grew into the year. The big game for me was the Cowboys game away. He bumped off Valentine Holmes and created his try for Kosi. And it was things like that where you think, he's another confidence one. His confidence has grown over the off-season. And then there was the Knights game. He got 2 tries off a scrum base, and just little things. I thought he was quite good because he's quite long. There was a game against Tuaupiki in a Canberra game where Tuaupiki was obviously speed for days, power, everything nuggety. But what Pompey would do was use his hands to just guide Tuaupiki into the channels that he wanted him. So I think there was value to actually Pompey's size and that type of thing. And then actually, he was he had his moments. The Broncos game, I suppose, where he pulled the jersey. I always felt that it wasn't going to be a try either way. I think if he didn't hold him back, Montoya was going to get caught. So I don't really blame him, but a lot of that stuff, like little brain explosions, there are those elements to Pompey still. But apart from the Broncos game last week, but the goal kicking was pretty good right up until maybe the moment was too big for him, and that's where you say, okay, maybe in a few years' time he nails those 3 kicks, but. Up until that Knights game, I thought that was the best goal kicking. 5 or 6, and so he did add value even when SJ couldn't kick those goals. So really interesting, really good season for me. I'd have to say it was 7.5. Yeah, and I would love to give him an 8, but there were some moments where it's like, okay, he got outclassed, but shucks, he's improved from what people would have had him at a 3 or 2. 1 maybe at the start of this year. Yeah.
Nick?
I mean, people need to watch the game a little bit better, I think. Especially the ones that are like, going on social media saying how bad he is. When you go back through his games, there's some brain farts. I think every player's had a brain fart in our team,
Yep.
But they don't get nearly as much stick as the bro does. I mean, I don't know him personally, but I think, so right up until If those kicks were at Mount Smart Stadium, bro, he would have got every single one of those kicks.
Yeah.
Guaranteed. But there's some court stadium, there's 80,000 people screaming. It's a massive moment. Yes, we needed him to step up. No, he didn't do it. But he played every single game this season. I don't think he missed one game, right?
Yeah, every minute, every game.
Every minute, every game.
Amazing.
Right, so that's an engine on the guy. He's quite elusive. He's quite elusive when he runs. He sometimes does the old little ditty with him and AFB do the same type of thing. Now he does that on every single hit up.
yeah, he does.
He does the little thing on every single hit up. So maybe it's a situation that he can try something else. But he has scored tries off that little ditty when he's kind of like close to the line. I've got him down for quite a few try assists as well. I don't have the numbers. He's got a lot of try assists. I remember a lot of Berry's one, but I'd love to go back through the stats and actually have a look at how many try assists he's got. He's got heaps. And he can kick as well. So we don't have a second kicker that can kick. So, with that said, and like every player, this season, you don't get to fourth by just having a couple of star players. It's like a massive, the old cliche, right? It's a team effort, and he's definitely bringing a lot of value to the team. Potential wise, yep, absolutely. He's got heaps of potential. And I hope Webby's got a plan for this guy going forward as well, because I'd love to see him stick around. I think he's proven to me anyway that he deserves to have that jersey. He deserves to be in the team. I just hope that he's going to be around after November and there's a plan for the bro.
Did you give him a score there?
Yep, Pompey gets a 7 from me.
I gave him an 8. Because I gave him a bonus point for him just maintaining overall with the amount of shit he got. He got so much stick. No one recognised the great things he did, and they're quick to jump on them. It's like those guys all over him about his kicking. And, I told you he's shit after the Broncos game, would have been cheering their asses off with those kicks from the sideline against the Knights. So that really annoyed me. And him and Bunty are two of the guys who got a lot of stick this year. And I asked C&K about him, and he said, man, I would have got so many more tries if Ed had stayed on the right side. He said, he's such a smart player. He said, when I came to the club, he's the guy who just amazed me with his attention to detail, with his understanding of the defensive patterns and all sort of stuff that most people don't see. And one of the reasons I started doing this Warriorholic is I hated all of the aggressive, toxic attacks, personal attacks on players last year, and I wanted to try and balance that off. So he was one of those guys that sort of felt for it. I ended up DMing him a few times during the season, say, bro, us real fans recognise the progression you've made and what an effort to play every game and stuff. And to his credit, he replied and said thanks. But I just wanted him to know that not everyone thought that. And I just look at him as a perfect example of a guy who progressed every game. He just showed that whatever Webby's doing with him, and the fact that Webby re-signed him mid-season shows that we've got what we believe to be one of the smartest coaches we've had at the club, who will be looking 4 or 5 years down the road, that he wouldn't have re-signed him if he didn't believe he was capable. He wouldn't have played him every minute of every game if he wasn't capable. So us fans who think we know what we're talking about need to sit back and sometimes reflect on that. And I like the fact that he started putting a bit more aggression into his running and started increasing his post-contact meters. He's another guy who struggled around the 70-metre mark but got well up over 100 a bunch of times. He started to make more tackles. I think, when we saw the ball get to him, he was very good at creating. He just wasn't getting enough ball. So I gave him an 8 purely on the fact that, like Levon said, no one expected anything of him. No one expected him to play more than a couple of games this year. What would have happened if Viliame hadn't been injured, I don't know, because he started out okay. But I think for what opportunity he had, 27 games for 5 tries and, God knows how many try assists, I thought he did a great job. As opposed to the next guy, we won't spend too much time on, because I honestly didn't realise Viliame played 5 games this year. He was my breakout Warrior of the season prediction pre-season. I would have thought he played maybe 1 or 2. I just don't even remember him being there. And he got the 1 try. Nick, what were your thoughts on him?
Yeah, not going to spend too much time on the bro. He's off anyway, isn't he?
Yep.
Yeah, so I'm not going to spend too much time on the bro. Not really much to go off, for the games or that try. I think it was against the Doggies. I think he got a try assist as well in that game. So yeah, look, judging him off one game, I probably would have given him like a 7, because of that one game. But I think he came back. He was
5 games he played.
He came back for the Sharks. I remember him in the Sharks game actually. 5 games after that. But didn't you come back for the Sharks when the Sharks came over and we pumped them 44-12 as well? Didn't you come in as...
I honestly can't remember.
Anyway.
I can't remember.
Anyway, I'll just say this. The bro had a good game. Yeah, he's part of the system. He's off now. Obviously, there was something that Webby didn't really like about him or whatever. Whatever the reason is, I really wish him well over there at the Cowboys. I think he would... Actually, I don't know where he's going to play over there, to be honest. They're pretty...
Hiku's gone.
Oh, okay. Yeah, Hiku's gone. But look, I've got to give the bro a 5 out of 10. It would have been good for him to stick around. I think there's a lot of promise for him at the beginning of the season. But unfortunately, that's just how it goes, boys. So, yeah, 5 out of 10 for me.
Cheers, bro. Everyone?
He might be an Ali Katoa type project. He's got the speed, bro. He's got all the things that we wanted. I think it might, like with Webby in there. I think if you don't got the right attitude, you don't got the work ethic. I'd be interested to see what Peyton can get out of him and like watch the space for him personally. It might be a really good thing. If he doesn't crack Cowboys next year, then it's not going to work well for him. He has to put the hard yards in. The problem with him was just mental lapses. Nodding off, not getting back defensively in the line, like just almost lazy type things, where you just didn't see that from a Pompey or a Berry. And honestly, his ceiling's higher than my view than Pompey's. Like I do think that in terms of his physical gifts, he's fast, he's powerful, he has all the elements. It's up here, man. It's in the mind. You don't get anywhere unless you got it in the mind. So I think I'd be interested to see what Peyton can do with him. Yeah, for me, it was really like even a 4. I want to be quite harsh because he had potential. He was. I had him personally. He was my breakout. This kid's going to have a massive year. It's just a shame it didn't work out, but that's happened before. The Warriors, we had Otukolo's leave. I thought he was going to do well. If you don't fit in with Webby's, and I'm happy. This is what I love about Webby's. Like, if you're not working hard, you're not fitting in the system. See you later.
Later.
Yep.
Yeah, I picked him as my breakout player of the year at the start of the season based on just the skill he had and the speed and the natural attributes. And you thought, man, Webby's going to take this guy to the next level. But I haven't heard this directly from anyone at the Warriors, but I've heard from a person who I trust, who came up with a lot of calls this year that were right. It was an attitude thing that apparently he was the last to training and the first to leave, and apparently Webby had the come to Jesus discussion with him and gave him a second chance, and he didn't take it. So he was basically let him know very early on in the piece that he wasn't part of the future. So that's why he would have only been used when he had to be used, which is a shame because I think he has got a lot of natural attributes. But I think that's one thing. I'll take a slight digression here that the Warriors can be accused of right throughout our history is recruiting guys based on physical attributes who've come in and shown they've got the talent but have just never had that, the work ethic and the mental attributes which you really need. And I talked to a couple of guys who talk about one of the reasons that Australia is so strong is that the depth in even their bush competitions, the mental strength of those guys is so high. By the time they get to cup, they're next level. Whereas we have to develop that once the guys get into the camp, or we have to be better at identifying it. Like a guy like Richie McCaw, who to me is, he's one of the most mentally hard athletes you ever come across, but he was never that great a player growing up. But he just worked his ass off. And I think we saw that in a guy like Simon Mannering. We've probably got that in a guy like Ford now, that you just know that he'll be working his butt off to get better every week. So that's just a shame for me. I'm not convinced that Peyton will necessarily be able to to turn him around through his military methods. I don't think he's a guy who'll respond to that, but who knows? I wish him well, though, because, like I said, he's got all the talent in the world. Levon, one of your favourites you've put a lot of discussion into over the year, Luke Metcalf.
Luka Mikiafu from up here. Yeah, he's gifted, this kid. He's look, X Factor. I looked at Ezra Mam on the grand final and see those 3 tries. I thought, hey, that looks like Luka Mikiafu. And I just wish. And I love Tamaiti. I think Tamaiti gives a different element to our team. But Luka has that X Factor about him. And I was thinking, man, what would it have been like if we had Luka just in a few moments, big moments against the Broncos? Could it have tipped the scales a little bit? I ultimately probably not, but he's got that ability. It's a shame with his hamstrings. Now, I watched the video they just put out last night on the vlog, and they had the part on Luke coming back from injury, and apparently he said he's almost nearly recovered. Well, sounds like it. Because it was the other hamstring and it wasn't a massive tear from the sounds of it. So he'll be ready pre-season. I don't want to. I'm hoping November 1 we don't hear anything that he signed with the Sharks or whatever. That's my fear. November 1, man, just watch out. I don't want to look at the news that day. But at the same time, there might be a new signing, so who knows. But then, if he can develop a bit more under Webby, I think he's got a bright future with us. He's got X Factor. He's got speed. Sometimes he's a bit individualistic. Probably doesn't get the ball to his outsides, and sometimes defensive jamming or misreads from the inside has caused a few issues for the edges. That's fair enough to say, but this kid is really in his first. This was like his rookie season, and he got a good run. And look at his try supports. We talked about support. Remember the part of the season where it was like no one was supporting anyone? Like Egan would make a break and there was no one there. And then as soon as he came in, he fell on the end of heaps of line breaks. And so you got to say, man, that's a massive asset. That's a massive something that we need. I'm going to say probably a 7 based on potential, and we didn't quite see it. If he had played that final series into that run, I think it would have bumped him up to an 8 probably for me. But he's got that X Factor, and we just hope we can keep him around,
Awesome, man.
Yeah, so I talk about players that I'm worried about. Team Tuaupiki. Worried about this guy as well. What is he, 20, 23, 24?
Yeah.
Right, living away from home. Yeah, it's the same old story with players that have got to go from here to there and there to over here as well, right? They're living away from home. He's a young guy. I don't know if he's got a family or anything, but just so I don't repeat everything that what Levon said, I feel like he was growing into that left side. So a lot of games that I'd go to, there was either a trust issue between him, Ford, flipping Montoya, not Montoya, Pompey, and then Montoya, and I was waiting for that to be unlocked. And sometimes I think he might have got 1 or 2 try assists from that side, but I think that was just time for them to gel. And I'd love him to stick around to see what is possible, right? To unlock that side, because I think he's got the potential to. I think Tamaiti Martin can unlock that side a lot easier. So putting that in his pocket as well. So he's got the speed, he's got the X factor. Does he have a chip and kick? Does he have a chip and chase on him? I don't know. He probably does.
He does. Yeah.
But he's probably told not to use it, right?
No, he used it in the Eels game, I think, and it bounced the wrong way. What was that game? He chipped over the top and it bounced the wrong way.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah. Well, in that Eels game, he scored 2 tries. One try he overcalled Johnson, right?
That's right.
So this individualistic thing, I actually like it.
Yeah, it is a good thing.
It can be a good attribute if it comes off. And for now, it's come off, right? It's come off every single time. So I think he's overcalled SJ once or twice. But anyway, if we can keep this guy, because let's be honest, guys, SJ's got 1 more year. Yeah. Is he really going to back up? And I suppose we'll get into SJ in a second. Is he really going to back up this season with another stellar season? Who knows? Luka Mikiafu, I would love 24, 25. When he's 26, he secures he secures our halfback spot and he becomes our future halfback. That's what I want to happen for Luka Mikiafu. So I haven't given him a massive crazy score, even though after every game he played, I did give him a massive crazy score. But I've given him a 7 because, look, he's just got so much potential, and I'd love to have him around at the Warriors for many, many years to come. But
yeah, I gave him a 7 as well. He played a lot of his time at Cronulla at fullback, and I wonder if that sort of influences his first. He seems to be the first instinct is to run, rather than often he doesn't even look outside. He's looking for that space. So then you go into 5'8". There's a very different position. I'm not sure if he's a halfback. I don't know, because of that individualistic mindset, where it says first is to take that option, which is probably similar to SJ when he was younger, and I always thought he was more of a 5'8". Whereas since he's slowing down, he started to focus on what's going on around him. And I guess that's, again, comes to guys who know a lot more about footy than I do. And they played him at halfback, even though he wore the 6 against the Tigers in the beginning of the year. He's left foot kicker, right? Which is
no, he's right. He's right.
Is he right? Was he?
Yeah.
Yeah. Who was this? I thought he was left footer. I don't know. I know Chanel is, but so I like the fact that he's just got that explosive speed, and he is that guy. Him and Tuaupiki are 2 guys within our current squad, I think, that can score from anywhere. They can break a game open. And it's just about time, I guess, and learning the role, and that doesn't happen overnight. And we know that halves, you generally don't come into your own until you're, maybe 27 or so. So I hope he stays. My biggest concern is like the homesick factor. I heard he wanted out earlier on in the year when he was really homesick, but then his partner came over. And I guess it's like anything, you probably need to be in an environment for 2 years to start feeling like it is home. And really want it to be your home, which is why I have confidence that Webby will be around for a long time. But if in his heart it's always like fighting to find reasons to stay, I don't know. It's hard because I'm a big fan of companies not trying too hard to get people to stay if they don't want to be there.
Yep.
Which is why when Reece Walsh went, as much as it was frustrating because he'd probably become the best player of the 2020s, if he didn't want to be there, why force him? And that's like with Ben Hunt. I don't understand why the Dragons try to force him in there unless I'll be there trying to find a trade to get someone in, because he doesn't want to be there, and it just impacts on your side. But I hope he decides he wants to stay for the right reasons, and it feels like home for him, because again, he could be anything he wants to be, and I do believe there's a lot of similarities with Man. So yeah. Tough to know. I guess November 1 will give us a really clear indication there. SJ, start with Levon.
Just as you were driving there was a rubbish truck driving past as you were talking about Reece Walsh. I wonder if that's a sign.
Yeah, it is, bro. 100%.
Cue the rubbish truck.
His mum was driving it too.
That's a good one. SJ, far out. Where do we start? I'll start with the emotional element of it. I've always said SJ's like kind of the emotional cog of the team. If he's happy, if he's in a good mood, pretty much everyone else is happy. Probably the thing we've got to take into account was that Panthers game, when the first one, the finals week 1. Do you remember how upset, how scared and frightened we all felt? And it felt as though the season hung on his performance and ability. The guy has, in my eyes, partly carried the team with AFB and the likes, but it's all the completion of every play, every set, every movement has always fallen back on him, and he's delivered it. He delivered. His performance was Dally M worthy, and the system is rigged, and I'll let you guys. I'll let Nick probably get into that one. But you take into account the season that he had. He was a massive driving force to where we got to. We don't get to a prelim final without Sean being on board, and it was the one. We go back to it was the 1%ers everyone realising that the kick chase, putting up the bomb, but being the first guy there. Defensively, the guy can bang. Like in most halves, they either can't tackle very well or they don't want to do it. And Sean said, "Nah, I want to make our side," and that side was the strongest defensive side of the year, with Newcourt and that channel. And I thought he had the best season of his career. He matured, and I think the key for me was that he evolved as a player. Like you said earlier, Warriorholic, he was a player that was individualistic in the start because he could break a line open with his footwork. He had the speed to burst through. In a similar way, what Luka Mikiafu can see of himself is like, hey, I can do. I'm just going to go solo here. Now he's like, nah. He's in a different phase of his career. He's creating for his outsides. He's managing a game, and it tells you that, man, you can game manage and get pretty much close to winning a grand final. And then if you add in the element like the window here, while we're talking about windows, I'm with Nick. 2024 with RTS CHT, this is a big window, and this is actually the year. Once we got into this year, I was like, this is the year where 2024 is really where you're gonna make a massive run. I don't think we get to the prelim final, but now that we've been there, you got to be tasting grand final or at least prelim final at home. You want something like that, and he probably, I would say he'd be up for it. Personally, you add in Roger there. It's tough to always come back off a good year, but if you time your run right, I think you can absolutely get there. But the thing is, you look at what happened to Reynolds in the grand final when he got that groin injury or whatever it was. It's so fickle with these older players. I'm knocking on wood. I hope Sean doesn't have but the calf, the quad. Those things add up over time. Can he? I think we actually have to look at it and say we've got to take some weight off of him. If it's Metcalf or Tamaiti or whatever it is, we talked about it with we'll get into the forwards next time, AFB, Tohu. They can't keep relying on these main cogs all the time. And I felt that was the same with Sean. It was too reliant on him. I hope we got to find a way to alleviate their pressure. Because you probably want to say, Sean, for me personally, he won't be Dally M next year. I don't want him to be. I want Sean to have a run of games going into a finals where he's peak and it's well balanced. Because, look, he's kicking 700 meters on his own this year. I mean, it's great, but we need someone else to take a bit of the weight off of him. So those are things to think about moving forward. But personally, I'd give him 9.5.
My man. Nick?
Yeah, I'm just going to get the score out of the way nice and early. I gave him a 9. Nothing short of that, really. There's just no point. No point even looking at stats. Go to games. Judge games from what I see. I think one thing that I would like to second the bro on that. I mean, I could agree with everything you said, but I think for me, it's that game management, right? The player that can actually manage the game to keep everyone's heads cool. There's a couple of players that I think if they're out of the team, it's going to be a tough day at the office. Tohu, obviously, our fullback to a lesser extent, but also SG. And yeah, you're right, Laron. I think we have kind of rely on him a little bit too much. I think when Tamaiti is in there, he does take away some of those kicking abilities. He does have a kick on him. I remember reviewing some of his games earlier on the season. His kicking meters wasn't too bad, so he's got a bit of a kick on him. But Sean's got that long range kick, that kind of 40-20 kick, and the vision that, I would like someone else to kind of alleviate some of that. Whether or not he can back it up, though, man, this has been a grueling season for everybody, right? Whether or not, have a look at the Cowboys last year, right, and to where they were this year. Have a look at the other teams that can't back up a season like this. I would love us to constantly be in their top 4, be in a GF. Oof, that's going to be. I reckon that's going to be a tough ask, bro. Honestly, I think it's going to be a massively tough ask. Those players coming back, like Roger, does he still have it? I don't know. But look, just coming back to SJ, there's been times in those games where he's been yelling at his players to calm the fuck down. He's been like, just fucking relax. There's heaps of time, and we've won the game. right? And if it wasn't for those if it wasn't that cool head that he's got on him, emotions might have went out the window, and emotions did go out the window. Those bloody forwards keep on getting fucking sent off. It was mostly forwards, actually, by the way, getting sent off all the time. But no, game management. I think every really good team has got someone that can manage the game. Doesn't have to be a halfback. It could be someone on the forwards that can manage the game. And steer us to victory. I mean, I do watch the post interviews with our coach and also the other coaches as well. And I can't remember a season where the opposition coaches have said, well, the difference was because you guys got Sean Johnson, basically, right? I think Serraldo said it. I think Sheen said it. I think a couple of other guys said it as well. It was just like, well, Sean Johnson was the difference today and we didn't do very well. So whether you can back it up or not, look, if you can't, I'm not going to be too mad. I will apologise for all the shit that I talked about Sean Johnson over the years, though. I think he proved me wrong. He's proved everybody else wrong. And look, he's just had an amazing season this year, so I'm pretty happy.
I'm going big, Matt. I'm giving him a 10. Because, as I said, the scoring's based on what I saw his potential was this year, and I think no one expected this. I think he added aspects of his game that no one ever thought could happen. I can't take away points because of the injuries. And I think what he delivered on those injuries, to play on a calf, man, the mental strength you need to do that, and the way he just kicked off that game against the Knights, and right up until kickoff, we weren't even sure if he'd be there. So for me, I couldn't have expected more. I totally agree that we did get too Sean-centric. I felt like Metcalf's probably got the bigger and the better of the two kicking games out of Tamati and him. And the unfortunate thing is we never had both Tamati and Metcalf on the field, other than the opportunity to put them on the field other than the Tigers game, which we could have done, and there's no easy games, but there are easier games that you give other guys an opportunity. Maybe, I don't know, Sean's probably the kind of guy who wants to keep playing, because often when you give an older guy a break, they start to get injured or whatever. I don't know, but I do think we need to develop a game that's not so centric around AFB, Tohu, and SJ. Challenge, I think, like Tuaupiki's probably one of the closer, different, but has a similar kind of potential to have an impact as the guy who comes to take over them. But SJ, the step down so big, and particularly him in the AFB. I think Tohu, there's potential ways to deal with that because of the depth in the back row. So his kicking game, I think, it was interesting that a lot of people got frustrated with it and criticised it at the beginning. Why he keep kicking down the right-hand side and blaming that on him, but it was obviously a strategy. I felt like he could have used the floating bomb a little bit more, but he just kicked to the numbers. But that game, epitomised his abilities and what he was capable of as the Knights game. Kick that ball in the right-hand corner every time, just to pin them down there. I wish he'd go for a few more early kicks in 40-20s, little things like that. But again, what he delivered exceeded my expectations for him. So what I'd like to quickly do is I'll mention the fact that we had Volkman played 3 games. We had Leatoa played the 1 game. And next year we have seeing CHT, Chanel Harris-Tavita, and RTS coming back in, whether CHT ends up playing in the backs or whether he's a utility forward or whatever. I'd be curious to see if you think, imagine what Webby's got a whole pre-season with these guys. I'm quickly going to touch on, you mentioned about the Cowboys and the like. Why I believe we deliver at this level next year and SJ delivers at this year is we don't have a World Cup.
Yep.
So that impacted the Cowboys hugely. You've got a lot of young guys who are in their first year of footy. They played rep footy, and we saw what happened with Tom Ali dropping out. When you get that the emotional, physical fatigue of backing up in your first year of footy, and the second year can often happen. We don't have that. We've only got a couple of guys, and they're only senior guys playing international footy. The second thing is the type of preseason that we all heard that Peyton is like that military kind of take them to dark places preseason guy to build that mental resilience, whereas Webby, every one of the guys I interviewed said it was the hardest preseason they'd ever had, but it was the most fun they'd ever had. So I think those two factors for me give me a belief that we'll come out stronger next year, and we won't have the big dip like the Cowboys just on SJ. So I think he has every ability to deliver at that, but I like your point. You don't want him to be daily in because that means we've relied on him too much. So enough of that. What do you think your ideal starting backline would look like round one heading into 2024, assuming that everyone develops, is fully fit, and Webby's been able to add certain layers to the team over the holidays? So I'll just go through. So we've got CNK, Tuaupiki, DWZ, Montoya, Kosi, Berry, Pompey, Waiala's not there, Metcalf, Martin, SJ, CHT, RTS, Volkman, Leotau, and I don't really think there's anyone else in the Cup team at the moment that's really pushing and bashing the door down just yet. Nick, I'll let you go first.
All right, so get this out of the way. Our fullback CNK. Our left-sided winger is Kosi. Inside Kosi is RTS. Fuck. Berry retains his spot. DWZ retains his spot. We've got Luka Mikiafu at fuck. We've got Tamari Martin standoff. We've got Sean Johnson at 7 still. So the only real difference that I'm saying is Corsi's going to go left.
So who did you have at 5'8" there? You mentioned both.
No, I've got Tamari Martin at 5'8", and I've got halfback as SJ.
Okay, cheers up. What's up?
Yeah, CNK at the back. Kosi's for me, yeah, left wing. I'll go RTS, yep, in the left centre. Berry for me, yep, I'll keep him there, and same for Dallin. I'll go Luke, Metcalf, and Sean. That's probably the most explosive backline you could probably get. You get Kosi with the massive running meters, and you get RTS footwork in the middle. Berry's safe, Dallin, then Luca's the X factor speed. So it's quite a bit. It's a more speedier backline for me, and it's probably we need to up the tempo even more. You looked at Brisbane and that the tempo they play with far out. That's what you want to try and keep up with. I think Montoya. It's not super slow, but a little bit slow. Pompey, just if Pompey probably would have stayed if it wasn't RTS. You're backing RTS saying that he's that good that he'll take. You got to put him in there. So
we don't know. Like we had this question the other night. And it was just like who am I excited to see more, CHT or RTS? I haven't seen RTS play centre in rugby league. I haven't even seen him play centre in rugby union because I just haven't watched rugby union in ages, right?
Yeah.
But I've got a mate who's a full-on, because I'm a blues fan that I don't watch any games, right? But he was saying, yeah, and I'd love to get him on actually. He's got a way more in-depth opinion about him as a centre in rugby union. So I can't get excited about something that I've never seen before. You know what I mean? I've never seen him play that position. He played on the wing when he was 20 something over when he was playing for Roosters, right? So I've seen him play on the wing, seen him play at fullback, haven't seen him play in centre.
Yeah, I'm gonna go exactly the same as WahsUp, I think, but I feel like I'd be keen to get your thoughts on this about. I think Metcalf, SJ and Martin will be interchangeable if they're all fit. I think you look at developing those combinations.
I think that was the plan. That was the plan this year, though, wasn't it?
Because they probably do see Metcalf and Tamari Martin as the long-term solutions here. But I'm curious, you've got CHT, Leotau and Volkman. Now I've heard. Again, this is, I have not heard this directly, but I've heard whispers that Volkman's a little bit on the out because he didn't step up and take the opportunities he was given him. We have no idea why he wasn't looked at as an option in those finals games there? Was it because he's carrying a shoulder, or just was it a decision that would already be made? But I thought he played really, really well in Cup. I thought his ability to control a game was very Sean-esque, and I've heard Webby say that he doesn't match well with Sean because they're too similar. I don't know if you guys saw that Laotoa game. It was against South, I think, in Cup a couple of weeks back, where he was almost like Latrell or Tom Trebojevic Origin style, where he was just playing both sides. He was just involved on every aspect of the play, which showed he's a very special player. And then you've got CHT. How do you see those guys, being developed, and what positions do you see them coming to, or do we invest in them? Start with Laotoa. What would your strategy be with him? We've seen like he first came out in his debut, probably one of the most successful debuts we've seen from a Warrior in a very long time, but he's only 18.
I'd say you give him time.
He's long term.
Yeah, he's a long-term project.
People are talking about he's going to be in our starting lineup next year. I'm just like, nah, bro. Nah, why would you do that? He's Cup's very different, to the top side. Sorry to be Mr. Obvious, but he needs to have a few more runs. Similar to what we've done with Ale, right? We've blooded Ale, and I think Ale he's had more experience in the saddle to be in there. Laotoa, look, he's a Cup player for now. He just has to be. You can't be rushing these players in too quickly. I'd blood him in for a couple of games next season, but starting spot, that's very far away for me.
Yeah. He probably just needs a bit more time, and there's no rush here. There's no rush for me. He's someone that you just, maybe he's first in line, or depending on what happens with Pompey, but you say maybe Pompey first for now, but maybe he beats out Pompey at some stage as the first backup. If someone gets injured. And then we haven't seen his full potential. Maybe he's a good winger. Maybe he's a good
second row.
Could be, maybe he's got some other elements to him that we haven't really seen yet.
He was a fullback.
So maybe he isn't.
Days,
maybe he ends up being the next Luke Metcalf. We'll have to wait and see what the plan is with Webby, but he's a slow burn. I think you probably think about 2025. You got to start him. That type of progression.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know him, but I just met him very briefly. I got a photo with him and just watched him walking around with Braden Viliame up at Mount Smart there, and I just got the impression he's very young. He looks like that kid hanging out with the older kids, if you know what I mean. Like, my son used to do scootering, and he'd hang out with the old, when he was like 12, he'd be hanging out at the skate park with the 20-year-olds, and you could just see he was bubbling and excited to be there. And I think he showed a lot of maturity going up against a guy in his 300th game and outplaying him. But if he's patient, I'd love to see him just dominate and cut and build that confidence, learn and make his mistakes there. Like you said, get a couple of games, because I do feel like long-term him and Berry are our centre options, but I don't think you want to rush him in as long as he's patient. Volkman, did you guys see enough of him to kind of have an opinion about, whether you look at a long-term halves combination, is he your long-term 7, or is Metcalf your long-term 7?
I think the problem is that we've got too many halves or too many players in that position. So I've watched a bit of him in Cup. I went to go watch the game with him where we pumped the Eels like 40-something, 10 or something. I can't even remember. But, I've seen highlights of him as well. Takes on the line, can kick, can score tries. Not much he can't do, but where's he going to fit in? Who goes, who stays, and who goes? I think that's the headache here, because there's been rumours of him having talks with these English teams. I wouldn't be surprised if it's a case of he's off.
Yeah, I think you got to remember where he came from too. So he came from the Roosters system.
Mm.
Obviously, they put the eggs in the basket for Sam Walker, which is understandable. So, but he maybe was, in their view, the rung above, underneath Sam Walker. So he's come from a system. We know the Rooster system; they're pretty good at recruiting. So, but then coming over here, and now the talk with SJ was at the start, and I think even Sean mentioned it, is that they were just going to take it on a game by game basis initially this year. So the plan was, I'm sure they've had in their back of their minds initially at the start of the year, was Volkman's going to be the future, because they didn't even think Sean was going to have the season that he had. And now that's changed. Maybe Volkman, under the what they brought him in for, was thinking, well, you guys said to me maybe I was going to get my crack at least 2024. Well, that's probably not going to happen, because we've just had a guy play a Dally M season. You're not going to get rid of him until you really see it fall off the wheels, So, yeah, he would probably be thinking that. I lump him in the place of a Tain Tuaupiki. How much sacrifice are you willing to make? But look, there's a couple teams out there. There's a couple Super League teams probably that would say, hey, come over for £300, £1,000 or whatever it is. We'll make you a star over here in the Super League. But yeah, you got to say, hey, if you want to hang around a bit more, you got the skills. Just interesting because if Sean didn't have the season that he had, I think Volkman and Metcalf at least we're going to get a shot, a decent run. I think Sean screwed that.
Yes, they ruined it. Yes, they ruined it for everybody.
Yeah, I've heard a few of the maybe it's 360 or the guys on SEN. The pundits who've played footy, they know footy well. Have just said, look, you've got the Warriors now with Chanel there. They've got one or two too many good halves. They're going to have to let one go. And I don't know, maybe it's just not him getting an opportunity in those finals gives a hint that maybe that isn't. But I wonder if there's an opportunity to loan him somewhere for a season,
that's a good idea.
like they did with Harry Grant going to the Tigers, that he gets that first grade opportunity, or whether it's first grade in the UK to hone his skills at a level higher than Cup for a season until we see what happens with SJ, because I just feel like he's one of those players that when he came in, he might not have had dominated any games because he had to sit behind SJ, but every game he played, he made a big play. And he executed when he had that, that chip over the top and regather and so forth. That I just feel like he has a genuine 7, and they don't come around every day. And those guys don't hit peak form normally until they're late in their 20s. So if there's a way to keep him, I still feel like, with what little I know about the game, I'd prefer to see him at 7 and Metcalf at 6. And that way you've got a really exciting attacking combination, and Tamati Martin's your kind of depth guy in the meantime. But I feel like there's every opportunity that, over the next few weeks that we may see him heading for the door, which is a shame if it does happen. But again, that's just a guess on my part. The last one we'll touch on is Chanel. How do you guys see him? Does he come into the backs, or is he used as a utility off the bench, or even looking at developing into a lock or a hooker or something?
There's options for me personally with Chanel. Like, you could use him as a half too. He's got a left foot kick. That's underrated at NRL level for mine. You got Cody Walker, Jerome Luai, Cameron Munster. Now they're great players, but what teams do they play for? They play for top 4 teams usually. A left-footed kicker gives you another element. That, man, if you could get it in the halves, it gives you another element kicking out of yards. What we're talking about with Sean, doing too much kicking, too much right-sided focused. But then again, he has elements where you're thinking he's got the skills to be able to play in the forwards as well. Really interested to see how Webby approaches this. I think most people are a lot of people from what I've talked about is they don't even see him in the top 17 and kind of question why he's come back. There's a lot of that talk around him. He's a quality player, man. I know. I think the fact that Sirenen's gone, that immediately puts you in, okay, that's a spot there. You can sit in there, figure out what it is that you're going to do in that role and work on it. So I think it's really up to him and Webby, whatever the discussions they have. Webby seems like a guy that just, hey, come here, I'm going to show you what you're going to become, and this is how you're going to do it. So, so I don't. There won't be an issue. He'll fit in wherever it is, but I can see potential halves options where like it's a Cleary Luai where you have that left and right option, kicking option, but. You got Luke Metcalf. Yeah, you're really going to have to see what's going to happen in 1st November. It's going to be... I'm going to close my eyes. I hope there's nothing happens, but you just know someone's going to fall out. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that there's just more questions than there is answers, right? Because like, if Webby, so we've all watched the RTS episode or like glimpses of it with RTS on that show with Monty Beetham. Webby had like this whole presentation for him. Well, he must have had a whole presentation for CHT as well, right?
Yeah.
Because he kind of comes across as the type of guy that is very methodical, that thinks things all the way through to the end, that doesn't just, hey, party at my house, let's just, get a couple of plates together. And he seems like he's that guy that kind of is very detail oriented, right? So he would have had a presentation ready for him. So I'd love to see what the presentation was. And convinced the bro so much that that he wanted to come back into the team again. So yeah, apparently when he played for Samoa, he played hooker.
Yeah.
Or he came off the bench and he can play that ball playing 13 role as well. More questions than answers, guys. And come November 1st, it's going to be like Levon said, obvious spot is for him to go and slide straight into Ciro's role. But do you think that would have been the plan for Webby to go to him and say, hey, look, there's a spot on the bench for interchange. Do you want to come over? Do you want to come over and be our interchange guy?
Did they initiate it, right? Because Cameron George had a game of golf with him. I think is how it all started out. And like, if I go back to watching him, I always thought he was like a guy who would be like a Cooper Cronk kind of guy, really came into his own in his back half as a career as a game controlling half.
Yeah.
He had all those skills, but it just, there's a calmness about him in those big games that I felt, but he was, you could see he was probably mentally conflicted. And when he finally said that he was leaving, those last 2 or 3 games he played when he unleashed himself, he was really good in a losing side. So I think he's got the skills there, but I guess it's that versatility. He can tackle like a demon. So you think, I could play in the centres, or I could play lock or hooker. And that may be his detriment. But you've got to believe that Webby, like you say, he's got a plan to all of this, and there'll be layers to it that's got to indicate that there's question marks over one of the guys there. And if it's Metcalf, one, because of his soft tissue injuries that are a bit of a risk, and the homesickness that you don't ever really get away with, particularly if your girlfriend's partner's feeling it as well. I don't know, but if that is a question in the back of their mind, and maybe there's just something they've seen from Volkman that we don't know, because we didn't know what was going on with Viola. So all I can say is that Harris DeVita is a warrior. He's a Kiwi. He's from Auckland. He's gone. He's had his time away. He's back home. And to me, that's something, when you're looking to invest long term, you can have short term injections, but without those halves or whatever position they're looking to fill. And it may mean year one, you're Ciro, but this is where we see you. When Tohu retires, we want to see you as our lock going forward, because Dylan will be reaching his peak by then. Or maybe we see him as developed as a hooker, as Egan's long-term cover, because maybe there's something about Lussick that concerns him. This is just bullshit, by the way. I'm just thinking of random scenarios. So as many questions as we have, he won't. All of these guys will know where they stand by now. They will have been given a 2 or 3 year trajectory. They will know full well they have to deliver on certain expectations to get there, otherwise they'll be shown the door, particularly from an attitude perspective, which is what I really like about Webby. But my final, it's kind of a thing I'd like to do a session after we've done the forwards on maybe what we really expect. But one key question that sticks in the back of my mind about Webby is he honest enough to admit to himself after 12 months that there are players even within the current squad that aren't up to what he believes will win a grand final? And is he prepared to make those harsh decisions and replace people who have worked their ass off and delivered everything they could for him, but he's just recognised they haven't? Or is he the guy who's just going to have so much faith he'll continue to persevere with them, even to our detriment?
Nick, you jump on this, bro. I'll jump after you.
I hope he's the first one. I hope he's that ruthless. I hope he's like the guy that's just going to be like, because I don't think we've seen the ruthlessness yet. I think we've seen a very nice, cool, calm, collected character that doesn't get too emotional in interviews. But I hope he is that guy, because like, as Warriors fans, what do we want? Do we want to have, a grand final? Do we want to have like players that we love and just want to keep them around because we've got some nice memories of them? I'm not going to answer that for everybody. I'm only answering that for myself. I want to go to a grand final and win one, right? And if that means that we need to cut players that are just not up to it, then I'm okay with that. But that's just me.
Yeah, I'm the same. I wonder what Cameron George and that said to him at the start of the year, because there's a period here where we've somehow landed ourselves into a window of winning a premiership. Look, anything can happen next year. Nathan Cleary gets injured, and Payne Haas is out. You just don't know. You just want to put yourself in the position to be able to get to a grand final. The other question is, what did Cameron George and that tell him? What did they say in getting the job? What the plan was moving forward? Because he's come from a system at Penrith where they've built that thing over the 10, 12 years to where now they can easily say, "Oh, Kikau, we love you, brother. You want to go sign? Cool. Okay, we're going to bring the next guy up." That pathway's there. He's in a tricky position where the developments isn't there, and he's actually got to cut guys and buy guys for the next 2 or 3 years to keep the train going until we get these young guys coming through. So he's going to have to make some cuts. He's going to have to actually... Whereas I don't think Cleary's had that issue. He's like, okay, you got to go. I've got the next guy up. So, but if that's the model that Cameron George and that have said, and Cappy, well, that's not going to be happening for another 3 or 4 years at least. So you're going to have to make some harsh decisions, which I think he can do it. I think he's done the low-hanging fruit of the Villiers. Now it's, okay, can you say to yourself, I'm going to cut a bunty R4, unfortunately. That just that's not up to my standards. We'll have to wait and see. Yeah.
And I think that's probably the original plan change, right? No one expected us to have that success year one, which I heard someone talk about. Cameron George said that's why they went and bought RTS, because that window's next year, or this year, next year, while SJ and Tohu are still here. So that probably changed, but I agree that it's a long road to build those 4 teams below the first grade, that you have that conveyor belt, because we don't have that yet. We've seen that clearly, that there's no new AFB. Zion Maiu is potentially that guy, but he's 2 or 3 years away from a size and maturity. But he's a really good. But other than him, who else have you got there? So I feel like we've got a lot of depth in some positions, but in some positions we would have to go and recruit to really level up. And if we're really honest with ourselves, and that's so hard, because I love everything that these guys achieved, particularly the effort. How can you question a guy put in more than you could ever expect effort-wise? But if you're honest, and I can't name who those guys are, but we're not on the Panthers and Broncos level just yet, whether you can get that much more development out of the guys we've got. I feel like if you look at the speed and intensity, our middles hit the line compared to what the speed and intensity the Panthers and the Broncos hit the line. It's not quite the same. There's not quite that creative flair in our edges. There's not quite that X factor in our backs. But can Webby build a game plan around that can win a grand final? And he got pretty bloody close. So I'm really curious to see. It's exciting to see how this develops, because normally you're really just hanging out for that big name to give you a little bit of hope. We've seen a couple of guys, and now it's more curiosity. I feel like we get one more signing, and I feel like we'll say goodbye to 1 or 2 players that will disappoint people, but if we're honest, we can understand it. Oh, well, thanks for that, guys. It dragged out a little bit more than we expected, as usual. But it's, I think it's good to get two really balanced opinions from guys who really look at the games at a level, far deeper than the average fan. And I think you've both got your own unique styles, and I love what the three of us has kind of combined to bring something new to supporting the Warriors with Nick. I love that you're out there getting the passion on the day-to-day basis from the real fan. You have the in-depth kōrero. I love the fact that WahsUp's educated me on so many things by slowing it down and seeing the idiosyncrasies and helped me learn that. So I'm one guy doing this, and you get a little bit sick of being a talking head. So it's nice to get someone else on who I know will think about it and be thoughtful and considerate. So hopefully the alliance continues to grow, and we've got
Absolutely.
a few interesting ideas in the pipeline for next year that the fans may get excited about once they come to fruition. But for today, thank you very much for coming on. Look forward to getting you back on maybe next week to go through the forwards and have a bit of a preview of where we can go next season. So thanks for coming on, guys, and don't forget, go and give these guys a follow-up. WahsUp, Spotify, Insta, X. You on Facebook?
Nah, no. My stuff goes through Facebook anyway, but
and TikTok, right, for you, yeah. Yep. And Warriors Fan TV, what's your main go-to? Is it more YouTube? I noticed you got your shorts up on everything there, but
yeah, just Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, TikTok, Facebook, Instagram, those four. Yeah,
guys, go get out and give them likes, because it definitely helps, and chuck in the comments into all of those hardcore guys who I've seen comment on all of our lives now, things over the years, over the season. There's a few I could name off the top of my head, but useless with names. I don't just want to give a couple a shout out, but everyone knows who they are. We really appreciate the love and support, because when I started this, I thought if 5 people watch me, man, that'd be amazing. But I think, between the three of us, we've probably got, a few million views this year across the different platforms, and that's pretty amazing for 3 first years. So, the Warriors, we've got to level it up in 2024. Stay tuned.
Definitely. Watch the space, Whānau. Watch the space, and we'll be doing more stuff like this. But no, I really appreciate it today, guys. And I'll see you guys on the next one.
Cheers, mate.
Yep.